Thank you very much. Very nice to see lots of new faces compared to last year. Very satisfying. Thank you very much to the organisers, to Nestle, to FAO, to Messe Dusseldorf for inviting us. Yes, Clementine couldn't be here because she's en route back from Panama, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, so everybody's stolen my thunder. So I don't think the 5 or the 10 minutes really is going to be, it might be a struggle to fill as opposed to a whip through, which I thought it was going to be. Okay, so I'm going to put that on first. I'm going to whip through these. Because all the other stuff about the environment has been seen. Now I'm a tropical agriculturalist. I come from the private sector. I joined UNEP in 2009. When I joined the UN, I understood that we had to get more out of our hectare, and that was it. Life was very simple. And then when I joined, of course, the reason that UNEP wanted to employ someone to talk about food and agriculture was because of the global food crisis. And this threw up all sorts of complexities, that it's not good enough to just produce more food. So I just want to remind us about the situation right now that we have in our food system. About 805 million people suffer from hunger today, while 671 million people are obese, so that's clinically obese, not like me, that are just overweight. Malnutrition accounts for at least 10% of the global burden of disease. In 2009, the world produced way more than we consumed, 2,831 calories per person per day, which I think we can all agree is enough actually for everybody to have a good feed each day. And of course we know that all this food is wasted. So we have to be clear that reducing food waste and loss is important, but it's not the only thing that's going to get us to a sustainable food system. I just want to underline that. There are other things, other drivers that are happening, which for us, we need to have in the backs of our minds when we're talking about food loss and waste. But what's critical about this is that when we start to talk about some of the rather controversial aspects around food security and our global food security future by 2050, is that we have to understand, in fact, that of course, when we talk about consumption and the types of food we eat, talking about food loss and waste is a really practical way, very practical way of getting into some really tricky subjects. So this is why in 2012, I'm going to skip across those, that in 2012, we, after Year Plus 20, we started something called the Think Eat Save campaign. And we did it very much in partnership with Save Food, Messe Dusseldorf, and a whole wide range of other partners. So Robert mentioned it today, but there is awareness raising. I think you mentioned different pillars than I am here, so maybe we've got different sources, but it looks fine, right? So good. So we've got awareness raising, collaboration, policy strategy and projects, and support investment programs. Now that's the Safe Food umbrella. Within that, what we have done, and we are doing, is specifically working on food waste. So not talking about food loss, which I think absolutely this is FAO's domain and something that should stay there. What is a bit different is talking about food waste, where an organisation like UNEP, which has a mandate that covers both developing and developed countries, to really talk about food waste, to try to tackle some of the really kind of complex and challenging areas around consumption and our attitudes to food. So if you look at the middle one there, the capacity building on food waste at regional level, we are in a current position now where we are trying to build capacity at the country level at both public sector and private sector actors in the regions to really start to think about food loss and waste, and specifically about food waste. So, for example, last week we had a meeting in Panama City where we had 75 representatives from different governments and private sector entities in Latin America and the Caribbean. 75, or where we have about 7 countries that have expressed interest who want to work with us specifically on reducing food waste in food and drink supply chains, and at the business level and also at household level. So this is really great. Now, the Think, Eat, Save campaign, and I like that picture. Unfortunately, I wasn't standing next to her when it was taken. But we started in 2012 a campaign called Think, Eat, Save, Reduce Your Food Print, which I think you can understand is quite clever in the way we've replaced D with T. It took a lot of time to think of that. So we started this in early 2013. We launched it. We had World Environment Day in 2013, June the 5th, which was dedicated. And we've had quite a lot of success in raising the profile of food waste across the world. So as a non-Twitter believer or user, I understand that this is quite an impressive amount, that we had a monthly average Twitter reach of 5 million. Does that sound quite a lot? I suppose it does. So watch out for hashtag Think, Eat, Save activities on World Environment Day, June the 5th, 2015. We're doing a number of things in Milan. We're doing something in South Africa, but we'll get to that later. And of course, we have our goodwill ambassadors, of which Giselle Bunchen here went on NBC during a breakfast show and made a non-breakfast meal with a bunch of old chicken there. So that was, so that's the kind of things we've been doing. So the main thrust of the work we've done, and if you were there last year, you'd have seen that we almost had this done, but we didn't quite. So at the end of May last year, we actually finalised this document, which is the world's first kind of framework for reducing food waste, food and drink waste in businesses and households. And it's a version 1.0, right? So we're not here to say, look, this is the answer. But what it does do is that it really creates a framework for activities in a very logical way, a sort of a nut and bolt way of actually reducing food loss and waste. Please do go onto the website and download it. And that was done, of course, with FAO and WRAP, the Waste Resource and Action Programme of the UK. And basically what we did was that we thought, gosh, well, what are we going to do about reducing food waste? And instead of everybody saying and sort of talking about the problem, we want to say, well, actually, look, let's start to do something. Let's start to do something about it. So we looked at what happened in the UK, and we thought, well, how can we internationalize this? And of course, some people say, well, okay, it's the Ferrari of food waste reduction the policies and strategies, but actually it has worked. It's the only thing that's really shown demonstrable food waste reduction in the supply chain and the household level. So we've done that. We've taken it into an international arena, and this is what it says. We're looking at, first of all, mapping, quantification, understanding the drivers. Then we're looking at the policy in environment. This is very important. It was mentioned by the keynote speakers. Module 3, which is about households, really understanding how household waste can be reduced. And number 4, which is very interesting for the audience here, is specifically dedicated to reducing supply chain waste. And what we've done so far is that we've got lots of interest in pilots. They are expensive, so we're doing it bit by bit. For example, we have Saudi Arabia is coming up. We've got quite a few others that are showing interest. But what we've done so far is that we've launched a pilot program in Tshwane and Johannesburg with the municipalities there in partnership with the South African Department of Trade and Industry. This represents about 7 million people, an extremely socio-politically diverse environment. We kicked this off in March this year, and we have our first kind of South Africa workshop where we're looking at the results so far, which will coincide with World Environment Day, June the 5th, in a few weeks. So really it's quite exciting. The reason that they approached us was that not a moral issue or anything like that. It was just very, very practical. There was no more space left for landfill. So how are we going to reduce the organic matter going in to landfill? Well, prevention first, reduction later. So this just shows what we're doing with the pilot. But it's very, very interesting. We basically want to show that this can work, not only in the UK, but in other parts of the world, by creating a structure and making sure that certain questions are asked, certain bases are covered, to ensure that a very integrated approach is taken to reducing food waste. If we don't do that, then what will happen is what Robert talked about, which is basically the burden would then be shifted either upstream or downstream. It's very important that we have this integrated approach from the supply chain. So the knobbly potato takes us into coffee. I think what I want to finish on is a little bit of a call to action. We've been talking about this now for 3 years, and quite frankly, I'm bored. I'm bored about talking about the issues. What I want to hear is demonstrable results. So we are here with FAO to really, and Messe Düsseldorf, the whole network, to really say, look guys, we're developing methodologies. We want to work with you. We want to work with the methodologies that you're working on. We want to bring them in, and we want to implement them, and we want to create tools and methodologies that can really have an impact on this 1.3 billion tons of food waste. And it's very interesting, 12.3 is the SDG that is going to guide us. So please, if you can, Google SDG, the SDGs, have a look at it. It's probably going to be agreed upon. So this is something where we will help you to really measure that, to really report on this, and hopefully we can make an impact. Thanks very much.